ever wondered why we fall for romance scams? Is this an issue of insecurity, maybe too much self-confidence, or even both? And what about debt? We keep accumulating debt and we know it's not good for us, but we're still impulse shopping. What is happening to us? Are we becoming a society of self-destruction? Let's find out. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jelena Kecmanovic, who is a clinical psychologist, director of Arlington, DC Behavior Therapy Institute, and an adjunct professor, psychology department at Georgetown University. Dr. Jelena, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to see you again.
Now, what I want to do is I want to talk to you. You and I have talked about these sisters, Shelley Frost and Linda Young. Linda was scammed $150,000. It was a romance scam. And I did a show with them recently, and I talked to the ladies, and I said, you know, if you could have a psychologist's ear, what would you ask? So the number one question was, you know, scammers look for successful, educated targets. So clearly these individuals have a good decision-making process in some parts of their lives because they're successful. So what makes one vulnerable to being scammed, especially a romance scam?
Well, I would like to start just a little broader in answering the question because, just what you said, we are surprised to find out that our friends or, somebody we see on TV who is generally really successful, maybe has done really well in school, in their work, maybe, become even famous in some ways. Or if we are such person, we're surprised to find that they're not exactly behaving in the same way in all domains of their life. It's interesting, a phenomena in psychology that I think Western psychology in particular has just more recently recognized, that we are, within ourselves, so intra-individually within ourselves, we are not as consistent creatures as we would like to think of ourselves. The sort of example of that, a joke might be, how come, I had a client whose husband was literally like a space scientist, he worked for one of the space agencies, and he was a space scientist. And she would get so frustrated and talk to me and say, how he can do this like amazingly intricate, complicated, advanced thing at work, and he cannot put his socks into a hamper. He cannot, in the evening, come home and just not put them here, but put them in a hamper, not put them, everywhere around the house. And so, it's not just that this, husband of hers is passive aggressive or, doesn't care about his wife, because he was actually otherwise a very loving husband. They had a good relationship. It's that we are not, consistent completely in different domains of life. And sometimes when we actually use a lot of our resourcefulness, energy, psychological willpower for certain domains of life, we actually can be a little depleted, and we don't have the same resources in other areas of life, right? So somebody who is incredibly successful, who uses, again, a lot of these, energies that we bring as human beings, to her work, for example, and, all of this stuff that makes her successful at work, she comes home and just, wants to let go, wants to let her guard down, wants to just, not be watchful, and, always, on kind of, walking on eggshells and being suspicious and checking everything 5 times. She wants to, be a different person, basically, right? In her personal life, in her private life, wants to give in a bit to the sort of fantasy of love and romance, right? So I actually don't find that surprising at all, that somebody who would be, very, very successful and otherwise very prudent and careful and, would check things in one domain of life wouldn't necessarily be the same person in another domain.
So we have about 20 seconds before we go to commercial break. And I wanted to mention this. A lot of people say, I'm really smart. This will never happen to me. And they're so wrong.
They're wrong. They're wrong. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody and everybody just if the circumstances basically are right, you know?